Hello, fine folks, and welcome to Booghy Plays. Today, again, I'm not playing. I am playing. I am playing with questions. And my guest today, because I am doing an interview, is the designer of Days of Fire, Budapest 1956. About those were some days. Yeah. And The designer, I think he's mostly known for Anachrony, for Tekhenu, and I would call him Mr. Solo Mode. He has created a gazillion solo modes, which he was praised for. So he will probably talk to us about his he the way he sees solo mode game playing and about game design in general. I am very pleased to welcome to Booghy Plays David Turczi. Welcome, David.
Hello, hello, and it's nice to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you here. How do you feel? You feel all right?
I feel like I normally feel on a very busy Thursday afternoon, but it's fun to take an hour out of my schedule to chat a bit.
Oh, thank you for that. It is well, it is a pleasure to have you here. I hope you're feeling fine and comfortable here in our virtual gaming room, in the virtual comfy chairs. So I hope you're relaxed. We're going to have two parts of the interview. The first one talks a bit about you, about your upbringing, and the second one is a questionnaire which surprises a lot of people. But I think in the end they all have fun with it. But I will start with the first part of the interview, and I'm going to ask you, David, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I'm from Hungary, Budapest. I lived my first 25-ish years in Budapest. Then I moved to London, UK for 8 years, and then 3 years ago I moved to the Netherlands, and that's where I reside now. So I like to think of myself as quite international. Uh,
I see. And what was your parents' professions?
my dad is a writer, poem, and translator, and all around man of culture. And my mom was originally a teacher, but she sort of stopped when I came around, and then these past years she's been working in how to explain that the insurance brokerage.
I see. And
And I used to be a software engineer before I realized that it's not worth spending 8 hours of my day sitting in an office only to go home and design board games. It's much more fun to just get up in the morning and start designing the board games.
we're gonna get there. Don't hurry. Uh, where? So you say you were born in Bucharest, in Budapest.
Yes, the other
The
one.
other one, yes. And you grew up there. How was your childhood in Budapest?
Okay, that's not the typical sort of questions I'm prepared for. I don't know. I talk a lot, and I've always talked a lot, so I was always the smart and annoying kid. So I had fun, but I'm sure everyone around me had hell. So
I see. And how was it to grow up in a big city like a big city, a metropolis, a big city like Budapest, the capital of Hungary?
uh, you know, I didn't have a reference for anything else. So for me, it was nothing special. For me, that was the normal. Um,
Because if you grow up in a smaller city, You go everywhere on foot. You find everything very close. In a big city, you have to go. If you, maybe if you want to go to a well-known high school, you probably have to traverse the whole city from one to the and it's different to grow up in a big capital than growing up in a
True,
smaller.
but that gave me a lot of free time while sitting on the public transport to read a lot of books. So the completed works of Terry Pratchett will take some time to read. So hey, free time is appreciated. The traveling between home and school and then later university. So I wasn't complaining.
um, how a person's one's personality is created a lot during the childhood years. How did growing up in Budapest shaped you as a person?
Okay, I don't know. I tend to not dwell and think about uh, these sort of things too much. Um,
Because well, now you are somewhere else. You are not in Budapest
yes,
anymore.
I am in Leiden, Netherlands.
Netherlands. Um, you didn't. Some people want to remain where they grow up. You are not close to your hometown, or how did that, in a way, growing up, create something in a human that later in life he will follow? How
I mean, uh, like my interests, my hobbies, and the things I was studying or preparing to do at work was always, international and technology and science and so for me, the idea of working abroad was never foreign. Uh, when I felt that the economical and political situations slash opportunities in Hungary were sliding out of the comfort zone a little over 10 years ago, then I was like, I'm getting a little bit bored with my master's thesis. I don't really need to finish it. My boss is a very nice person, but he couldn't give me a raise even if he tried. Let's just send out my CV to a few companies all over the world and all over the English speaking world and see who replies first. And then a week and a half later, I got a job in London. So then I packed up my stuff with my partner at the time and we moved to London. And that's
that's
what that
yeah.
was it.
So you talked a bit about the but until we get there, what did you study in high school?
Uh, well, I like to say that for every decade of my life, I had one obsession. For my high school decades, my obsession was space science, and it was about space probes and astrophysics and stuff like that. And I had quite a few friends who went on to study that and do that as a real profession, and then they were all like, well, small country, you can either teach this or monetize it, and I don't know, sell GPS data to software companies. And it's like, yeah, not neither of those sounds super exciting. So uh, come university years, I switched to computers, and then I went into business software, and then that's what I spent my 20s on. And then I spent my years since on board games.
Board
So it's
games, yeah,
like
yeah.
I went from space to computers to board games. So one would say straight curve up.
Uh, well, when you were a child, did you play a lot? Did you play sports? Did you play mm, until we get to or maybe you stayed more in home and played games on computers, video games, things like this? When did playing started in your life?
I mean, I don't think I never not played. Uh, like playing the classic playing card games with the grandparents was always a thing in my childhood. Uh, Modern board gaming didn't enter until the university years, so I don't have childhood stories about that. Certainly throughout high school and early university years, I did play a lot of computer games, but then I sort of drifted out from that. So the more board games took over my brain, the less I felt the need to play video games. Yeah.
So
So,
playing was a big part of your childhood. You played a lot with your grandparents, as you said. So
oh, yes.
yeah, um, when uh, when did you discover board games? Did you play a lot of Monopoly when you were a child? Did you play classical games when you were a child? Do you have that? Did you have
We've,
that?
we've definitely played a lot of Risk
Risk.
in high school. I remember that. And I also remember that there was a video game adaptation of Risk, which had like more smoothed out rules and like average dice and like more regions, like you can't get stuck in Australia and stuff like that. So I remember that we took a Sharpie to my copy of Risk and it's like modded the board to work more like the video game adaptation because that felt more fair. Modern board gaming came my way in university.
With
Was the First it was the social fun with Munchkin, as for many people. Then real games was Battlestar Galactica from the theme. It was my favorite sci-fi series. It was everybody else's favorite series. So I was like, hey, there's a board game. Let's try it out. And then
that's you were at university late 2000s.
yes,
Yes.
yes. So yeah, and I think for the first 2 or 3 years, that was pretty much the only proper board game I owned, and we must have played it 2, 3 times a month for 3 years. Same 5, 6 people, rotating few people in and out every week or 2 weeks. So it was like we didn't even know to ask for anything else until yeah, I like the big explosion to me happened when I found a board game shop in Budapest and like bought Ankh Morpork because of course Terry Pratchett, as I mentioned, and then I went to my first Essen in 2012 and returned with 20 new board games and things have gone astronomical since. So
I see. Um, so it,
my first Euro game was Manhattan Project. I'm fairly certain.
I see.
So
What did you say you studied in university? You said you studied
software engineering, yeah,
software engineering. Yeah. So
yeah.
you practically your profession is a software engineer.
Well, it used to be. I haven't
Yeah.
done any softwaring for over 5 years now, and I wouldn't trust myself to do any now. But yeah, my paper says I'm a software
Software
engineer. I
engineer.
don't feel like one anymore.
Okay. Now that's important because you have your brain works in a certain way. Software engineering creates a certain type of brain.
Or I would say a certain kind of brain is easy to learn both software engineering and game development with. So yes.
Okay. What kind of a player are you? What kind of games do you enjoy?
I definitely would consider myself as a heavy Euro player. Not necessarily the heaviest. I'm not very good at winning. I enjoy the games where there's that moment where like, now I get it. Okay, I've lost, but I got it. But I got it. Uh, like for me, a game should take an hour and a half to 2.5. If it's longer, if it's shorter than an hour and a half, then it's unlikely to do something interesting enough. And if it's longer than 2.5 or 3.5 hours, then it's probably burning my head so much that I have to be stepping from one foot to the other, trying to burn off the excess heat being generated by my brain. So,
Fair enough.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So what like I design the kind of games these days as I hone in on my own taste better and better, the kind of games I like to play. So
I see. I see. So you, as any designer is, you started playing heavier board games. What was the heavier board game that got you into this realm of heavies? Because this is this is let's say a niche somehow in the board game industry.
I would say I would say Dungeon Pets was my first foray into heavy gaming.
I see.
Definitely, and Tricarian, because when I originally did my first design of Anachrony was like it had most of the core idea, the whole borrow from your future self and build an engine out of your tableau and the asymmetric workers, but that's about it. And and at that time, it was Victor and Richard at Mindclash who were more into the heavy games, and they brought the game up. So they fattened the game up. Whereas these days, it's Victor is the one who's bringing the games up, and I'm the one who starts high. So it's like our taste changes as we age. So for me, Tricarion was one of my earlier heavy games, which was Victor and Richard's design, and I've played it before it got released, and that's why I pitched them Anachrony. So
I see.
so I kind of learned the genre by doing it.
Ah,
So
okay, okay. Um, when did you start transitioning? Let's call it. When did you say I want to design a board game and I want to publish it? I want to see it published. When did
oh,
you think I want to do this seriously?
I mean, I mean, uh, I have been designing longer than I've known what Euro games are. So uh, the fact that I managed to make it into a profession was just sheer luck and my willpower powering through everyone. But a friend of mine, Mihai Vincek, came. He was one of my in my gaming group of Battlestar Galactica players. Came to us. I think it was 2010, maybe it was 2009. I don't remember. Back in the epical past, said that well, I was bored on the family vacation, and well, I can't teach my family Battlestar Galactica, so I tried to design something similar but simpler. And and he showed us the game that he designed, and I was like, "Oh, I love it! Can I help?" So me being me, I immediately jumped on it and I wanted to help. And then in a year or two, we made that game work, and through a series of lucky coincidences, I managed to get that game signed. And in 2013, that game got published called Redacted. And there are a lot of innovative and unique and never done before, never done since ideas in that game. But of course, with my today's professional eyes, I know that it was a very unpolished, very messy game that any one of us could have done much better since. But it made me made us the first internationally published Hungarian game designers. So when Mindclash was launching Tricarion on Kickstarter the same year, he came to us. They came to us for advice,
I see.
and I went and played Tricarion. I was like, "Holy shit, this is actually good!" Like, sure, we got our games published, but this is actually good. Can I instead come and work for you? And that's how Anachrony happened. And then
I see.
Anachrony launched in 2016, 2017, and within less than a year, it was in the top 100. And that was my fourth game. Like after Redacted, I did the small game, and after that, I did Days of Fire with Michu, and that was like we took it a lot more seriously than Redacted, and it got a lot better, and we worked on it a lot. And then my fourth game was Anachrony, and I was suddenly quote unquote famous, and I was like, okay, and what now? And I just went around and I was like, I asked probably established publishers and other designers is like, hey, would you like to work with me? And they said yes, because I'm the guy who made Anachrony, and I'm like, okay, but I know nothing. So I absolutely learned it on the job. I got supremely lucky First of all, by having a good idea, and by second, by meeting Victor and Richard at the right time when Mindclash was taking off. So I rose with them, and Anachrony was at the right time, place at the right time, and everything I know I've learned since.
So
So
yeah, you learned while you played. Uh,
yeah, everything I know about game design I've learned in the past 5 years, while Anachrony happened 7 years ago. So
um,
and actually opened the doors and allowed me to work with such people as Daniel Tashini and Vlada Schwartil and Martin Wallace and Richard Rees, and it's like I get to experience the absolute biggest of our industry face to face and work with them and see what I like and not like about how they improve or develop their
play
own
with their
stuff.
designs. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And now you kind of play into one of my questions because being a designer is one thing, but being a developer is a whole different hat. What do you like being more, a designer or a developer?
I don't put a difference between the two because what I think my greatest skill is that I can sit down with anyone being the other party and I can try and fill in the other side. So when I work with Daniel Tashini, who is a great inventor of mechanisms, then I act as the developer. Then my job is to round the corners, to link the segments, to these sort of things, to make sure everything is named nicely, to make sure everything makes sense. When I worked with Martin Wallace, who does everything thematically, but like throws a randomness at everything, then my job is to make sure that the game ends up in a sensible middle and not just all over the place. But when I work with Mindclash, who are amazing developers, or when I work with Simone Luciani, who is the developer half of the Tashini Luciani pair, then I'm the one who needs to put down the crazy ideas on the table, so the ones that they can make better.
So
And
in a way, they are different hats, but you have to know when to wear them.
yes, yes, exactly. And and again, I'm lucky enough that I could do developer but famous in a way that I can get designer credits for projects where somebody else is the designer and I just come in and improve their game.
I see.
And 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 a few years ago, I found Nigel Buckle, a friend of mine from a UK game group, and he's been designing a lot of games in a very slow and measured manner. And he's got a lot of amazing ideas, but to go from a good to a great idea would take him months. Whereas I would sit down, play the game once, and then change 20 things on the spot. And then 15 of those would be a change for the better.
Uh,
And then when we mesh our two styles together, it just makes everything better because he stops me from swinging too far, and I make sure that he gets going.
yeah.
It's like push and pull. And because of that, Imperium and Voidfall both came out of our collaboration relatively close to each other. Both were originally his ideas. Yet I dove into both of them face first, and both of them started as a developer job and ended up as a co-design because I just wanted to improve so many things on them that I started designing into it. So
I see.
there is no hard line between development and design. So
No,
yeah,
like I said, yeah. Could I ask you please to stay a bit closer to the computer? I think there's a
sorry.
yeah of the Bluetooth. Something happens because of the distance, and it sounds sometimes you sound a bit robotic.
Sorry, I moved too much. That's how I talk.
No, not a problem. It's just I don't know what happens with the sound sometimes. Now, what is your design philosophy?
Um, Interesting choices a reason to do everything and a reason to not do everything. It's like I design strategy games. In a strategy game, any button, any toy you put in front of me, I need a reason to want to push that button, but I need a reason to not push that button right now. Because if I push that button every game, then that's not a strategy, that's a mandatory button I need to push.
It's a scripted
And if
one.
I,
It
yeah,
becomes a
and
scripted
if,
game.
exactly, and if I never want to push that button, then why is that button there? You know, I need this button once every 20 games. It's an incidental thing. So my job is to design individually interesting buttons and give you many reasons to push them and many reasons to not push them. And the rest is just theme. So the rest is just making sense of the game.
How much do you believe in? How do you work? You work from theme to mechanisms, or you create mechanisms and add a theme afterwards?
Usually, when my game works, when I have a good game, then it's usually one mechanism. Then find a theme that mechanism can model, and then design everything else theme first. So mechanism inspires theme, theme inspires everything else. So
I see.
It's a clear cut for people who design one mechanism games or zero mechanism games. So experience-based games, what we call Ameritrash games, they aren't mechanism focused. They have a theme, and then you fill out the theme with lots of little fun little buttons. Whereas single mechanism games, or as you often find them, Italian Euros or small German Euros, they have one smart mechanism and some window dressing. And then in those games, it's sensible to call them mechanism first dressings, because everything that's not part of that mechanism is not worth spending more than a sentence of description on. But most of my games tend to have one mechanism in it that is like 30-40% of the game that inspires the theme, and then the theme fills out the other 60% of the game.
I see.
And then depending on the genre, this line is somewhere else. So in Tekkenu, it's 80% central mechanism, 20% stuff around it inspired by the theme, because it's mostly an Italian Euro. Whereas in Perseverance, which is very thematic driven, it's 20% central mechanism and 80% stuff filled out by the theme. So, and every other game is somewhere in between these two.
I see. Well, I can tell you that I felt that Tekkenu. We did the playthrough on my channel, and then we did a post-game discussion, which was around 30-40 minutes. And there we talked, and we kind of reached this conclusion that it is mechanism-driven, and the theme is more of a salad dressing than everything else.
Yes, because, but even when the setting is window dressing, as in it's not narrative integrated, so when you do an action, it doesn't do what it's called, even then it's very important to make sense. And Tekken is actually a great example for that, because sure, we started from the point of, okay, I want the shadow to affect drafting. I tell this to Toshini. Toshini comes back with that matrix of pure tainted, whatever. You take the dice. And then, all right, we need 6 actions. So what are the 6 actions? Okay, let's name after gods. Okay, what do gods do? Osiris does some farming. Okay, let's have a map of the Nile and put some buildings on it. Okay, what does Ra do? Ra builds a temple to the pharaoh. All right, let's build pillars. What does Hathor do? Hathor likes the fires of the household, so let's build homes. Bastard likes happiness. So even when the theme is window dressing, it is inspired. So it's not green cubes and black cubes.
I see. I understand what you want to say. I think everybody does.
But in Tekkenu, it's present very little. It's only 20% there. It's 80% mechanism, 20%. Yep. But it's there. I don't do cube level abstraction. Get 3 yellows to turn into 2 greens, because because that doesn't interest me. That would bore me. So,
Yeah.
and I don't want to design games that bore me.
And well, I wanted to ask you because we talk about ideas right now, and I thought a bit where are your when ideas come to you, where they come from, and how do you implement them, and how did how how they end up in games?
I have three kind of ideas. Let's see if I remember all three while I go through them. First one is the product vision. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a game that looked like this on the table? And then I try to fill that out. And this is the kind of idea that works the least often, but when it does, it's magnificent. But interestingly, even then, it's usually not very successful because just because I find something cool doesn't mean anybody in the market does. This is how games like Roam and Roll or Defense of Procyon 3 came to be, or Welcome to Dino World. Well, that wasn't my idea, but it was me who pushed it into this crazy direction. Came to be because Roam and Roll was like, what if there was a roll and write game that was actually a proper full-sized Euro and it had a shared board where everybody was drawing buildings? What mechanisms would it use? I don't know. What theme would it have? I don't know. Let's figure out a game which is a heavy roll and write with a shared board in the middle where we're all building stuff. And we filled out the rest. Defense of Procyon 3 started as, I want a game that looks like a war game, but it is actually four little asymmetric Euro card games fighting in a 2v2 battle. I figured out the theme mid-flight. I figured out what the four Euro games do mid-flight. So these came from a vision. But then again, I have dozens of visions like this that I discard because I can't fill them out with interesting buttons in the middle. So this is the high excitement, high risk, high reward kind of design. Then the second very common kind, which tends to yield the best results, is the that other game but different type of designs. Dice Settlers was the first one, which was Quarriors but without the randomness. And since then it has happened a few times. I've recently finished the game which originally started its life as Barrage but network building dominoes, and then it went somewhere else. But the network building and the dominoes are still in it. So it's like, take one thing from a game I like, take one thing that game doesn't have, smash those two things together, and then drop everything else from that game, and then build the things around that, and then see where I end up.
Yeah. Now it came to my mind a quote from Tarantino, who said at some point that smart directors don't copy, they they
Combine.
they get influenced. They don't
Yes,
copy, they
yes.
get influenced. Something like this, he said at some point, because he has a lot of influences from Japanese films and well, some from
I
the
mean,
yeah.
there's nothing shameful about it. I mean, look at Orc Nova. You can pinpoint every single influence on that
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
and it does it well. And you can like bits of Orc Nova and you can dislike bits of Orc Nova, but it or a few years earlier, Clans of Caledonia, it just combines good bits of other good games in a more palatable way than any of its forebearers, and that's a great win.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I don't know what you did. You did something with the yeah, and I was hearing you better. I don't know. And now,
oh, I put it forward. And the third kind of game design, which happens very rarely because I can't control it when it happens, is when I come up with a new mechanism. And and then it's oh god, how to build a game out of this. And like I think the most successful one I've had of that was the one Tinsu, when I said I would like a worker placement game where the workers have different colors. They go onto the board. The board is shaped like a mountain, and once a worker goes on, it never comes off. And also, there's a rondel in it somewhere. This is how I started.
I see.
Because I was on a Concordia binge. I always say that every game is better if it looks more like Concordia. Like I can point out the Concordia in like half of my games, like Tawantinsuyu, Procyon, Voidfall. I can point out where Concordia is in each and every one of them. And so I was like, all right, Concordia does a different kind of ronda. And the one rondel I couldn't see anywhere is worker placement rondel, because a rondel is all about a fixed path of you can do this, then this, then this. Worker placement is all about not fixed, so you can go here or here or here or here. And I was like, why does nobody link the two together? You have a rondel that tells you where you can worker place, and if you want to go far from it, that's expensive.
Yes.
And then, okay, what theme could be represented by this? Okay, so it's a mountain, and the rondel tells you which side of the mountain you can place workers on. And then the other game I was playing was Keeper, and Keeper had different colored meeples for different professions. So okay, I want different colored meeples for different professions, but instead of the lead follow of Keeper on worker placement, let's do a lead follow on the rondel activation. And then, okay, so we have a mountain where we're placing meeples there, and the meeples stay there so that we can put other things next to it. So who is placing meeples on a mountain to develop that? Okay, so they are farming the mountain. Who's farming a mountain? It's the Incas. So
I see.
I
understand.
So while it's again a window dressing Euro, it was entirely theme designed.
I see.
Because this was the only theme that fitted my mechanism of rondeling worker placement.
I see. I know. Well, I called you in the beginning, Mr. Solo Mode. You do a lot of solo modes. What is your?
Yes.
I can imagine what is, but I would like you to tell us what is your approach when you think of solos.
My approach when I play solos, when I design solos, is that I play the game two-player and I take notes on what do I care about my opponent, and that's it. I almost never actually play games solo. I don't have the discipline to focus on my turn, bot's turn, my turn, bot's turn. It's my brain can't handle that. The whole thing to make solo modes came up as a side idea for a stretch goal back when Anachrony was on Kickstarter 7 years ago. I looked at solo modes that were on the market at the time, and they were poor shadows of the game. They were either teaching you the game, or they were giving you a score 100 points before in the first 10 rounds of the game, or here's a random opponent randomly stopping you from doing things, and meanwhile you have to score X points in X turns. It was like, yeah, but I want to play the game. I play these big complicated games because I want to feel smart. I feel smart when I'm like, I could do this move or this move, but since you are going to do that move or that move, so if I go here, then you have to go there, and if you go there, then I can also do this next turn, and then I can do both, and then I'll be, and that makes me feel smart. And the solo modes, never, like the few solo modes I tried out 7 years ago, didn't make me feel smart. They made me feel like jumping through hoops. And I tried to design a solo mode that makes me feel smart, and let's face it, my first attempt was less than great, but it was still closer to the real game than anything else on the market at the time. And
I think at the time, that's 2016. I think at the time the only ones who did, let's say, smarter outside, I think there are some good beat your own scores solos like Uwe does, which I think they're good. Uh,
I am not getting into that.
I,
I have my own
they work.
issues.
If you want to beat your own score and you want to do your own puzzle, you can do it. Um, but at
Yeah,
that time, I think the only ones who was the Automa Factory who started doing
yes,
for
I have played Morten's Automa for
yeah
Viticulture,
for viticulture
which
and Scythe.
which had the right idea about abstraction and game-like approach. It was too random, and he and I, are professional friends, and we've talked a lot about it, and he agrees, and his Automas are much better since. But for me, the fact that the viticulture automa was just like flip a card, randomly block a spot, that was annoying because I still couldn't predict whether the bot would go here or there.
Yeah,
Whereas if I play against you, I can look at your board, look at your resources, and even in a relatively lighter game like viticulture, I can strategize based on where you're gonna go, and I couldn't strategize against the bot. And that's where it started. And people liked the bot for Automa, for Anachrony, and then they came back and a bunch of people volunteered to help me more. And then Petricor got a solo mode, and that was an area control game. And previously, area control games didn't even work in two-player. And here I was with Dave Kirkhoff releasing a 1 to 4 player area control game, and everyone was like, "How?" And I was like, "By making the bot do roughly what a human player would do, just simpler." And and again, I got lucky. I had a bunch of people, Nick Shaw, John Albertson, Zoe Borders, and David Digby are the 4 names I always mention, who kept coming back game after game saying, "Well, I liked what you did on the previous solo mode. Can I help you make the next solo mode better?" And after a while, I got to a point where I didn't have to go through the suffering of me having to work on the solo mode anymore. I just sketched out what the solo mode does. I will put it in front of one of the 4 of them, and then they would do it. And then we would share the credit. And I could work on like high level improvements. And every now and then a designer or a publisher would raise the challenge. Famously, Emerson Matsuzuki for Foundations of Rome said, "Can we please not use a die in the solo mode? I don't want a die in this game for how it looks like. Like this game is too pure to have a die in it." And the standard solo mode pattern I used at the time had a die in it. And I was like, all right, how to redesign the solo mode pattern without a die? And that's how the whole flip a card that highlights one of the previous cards to resolve and then slide and resolve pattern came to be, which I've since used in Kanban Eevee, in Perseverance, in Railways of the World. So it's like games kept innovating, or Snowdonia had the pre-sequenced cards semi-randomly so I could teach the bot sequences. It's like certain actions it would take early game, certain actions it would take late game. And yeah, so I could focus on high-level improvements. And today I have this toolkit. I have 4 or 5 Automa patterns, the Rondel from Die Settlers, the Card Flip from Excavation Earth / Petrichor, the State Machine from Tawantinsiu / Anachrony. And when a new game comes in, I'm like, we need the action selection from that, we need the resource abstraction from that, and we need to model that, and that. Hey, John, would you like to take this project? Shoot. And done.
Yeah.
And
here,
and this is not a secret because these days I'm sharing credits with them, I'm splitting the money with them, so it became sort of a business. What I do is more of a quality control and the architectural guidance, and it's a win-win for everyone. And
yeah. You think the way you speak exactly like a software engineer, because the way the way you think, it's algorithmic, in an algorithm way. This is the way. So, well, in a way, it takes one to know one. because I've.
Yeah.
But yeah, so not that I'm doing this, but I've studied computer science in university for a few years.
Yes.
So, um, well, in a way, can I ask you? I think we've talked a lot about the so I want to talk more about solo modes. I'm not a solo player. I'm not a big fan of solo bots because I don't want to do another. I prefer another player, but I think they're a smart addition to today's board gaming. And yeah, uh, uh, it made at least after the pandemic, the solo gaming it became a big part of our industry, a huge part of it. I don't think there is a game coming out today which doesn't have a solo mode, which is a
Well, the situation is not there yet, but certainly that's the
the
tendency.
tendency.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
What is fun to you?
uh, either making myself feel smart or seeing the revelation in somebody else's eyes that I did something that made them feel smart. So
uh,
these two things.
what is your most played game?
Most played game.
Not outside your
Um,
own. Outside, but
outside my
yeah,
own.
outside your play
Ooh,
tested ones, of course. Not those.
I mean, I played Touch Color almost 100 times before I started playtesting the expansion, and then I played it another about 100 times while I was playtesting the LRV expansion with Vlada 5, 6 years ago. Wow, that was long ago. Um, but a game that I have never worked on, my most played game would probably be Glory to Rome. I think it has overtaken Terraforming Mars.
I see. Glory to Rome then. Well,
Yes, I like. Uh, like not just excluding my own games, but excluding any game that I have worked on in any capacity whatsoever at any point. So
I see. And what is your favorite game?
probably Brass, I would say. Maybe like Glory to Rome is fun, but Glory to Rome is not good in the traditional sense. Glory to Rome is nonsense, but it's amazing fun. Whereas Brass is good. Brass is good.
Which one you prefer, Lancashire or Birmingham?
Uh, if it were up to me, the answer would be somewhere in the middle, because, like, rules editing wise, Birmingham's rules are much better, but there are a few things in it that I prefer the way Lancashire does it. And map wise, I mostly prefer Birmingham, except at lower player counts, I prefer Lancashire. But as somebody even in the comments asks, one day I decided to do my own brass because I'll just make my own and I'll design my own brass, which unfortunately Roxley decided to not even look at, which I'm slightly mad at for them. Like they didn't reject publishing it; they decided to not look at it, which made me a little bit mad. Yeah, the Isle of Wight has I created a rule set which was half taken from Lancashire, half taken from Birmingham, and has a completely new map and a bunch of new rules and some enthusiastic small publisher in China created a free to download version of it with beautiful art, and I got the first copy 2 days ago, so I'm now finally gonna play Brass Duel on the table 3 years after designing it. So
I see.
funny you mention it, but it's only ever gonna get really published if Roxy changes their mind, because I'm not into pirating the license. So
Yeah, but you can retheme it and
no. It's like the rules is so much copy paste from Brass that I would not want that game published without the word Brass in the
I
title.
see.
So
I see. And who's your favorite designer?
well, that's an extremely hard question to ask because
I know.
because as I jokingly say, these days I don't play any board games where I'm not on first name basis with the designer.
So
So, so it's I can't really pick because historically I've been saying Vlada Shvatil because first he was my introduction to the heavy gaming through Dungeon Pets and uh, through the ages, and Space Alert remains my favorite favorite chaotic co-op of all time.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done anything in recent years, so he's not at the forefront of my mind when it comes to gaming. And then there are people like Simone Luciani or Vito Lacerda or uh, uh, my brain is blanking. Uh, my brain is blanking. But yeah, but these are all people that I'm friends with, me, I've worked with, so it's I can't really pick amongst them because it's playing favorites and I don't like that. So
Okay. And would you want to add something that I might not have asked you? Do you want to talk about something?
um, which of my own games do I enjoy playing the most?
I don't know. If you want to answer that question, well, you asked it, you answer it.
These days, I'm completely addicted to Imperium. When the original Classics and Legends came out, as I said, I originally started out as a developer and then slowly got into designing a few extra stuff into it. I've played it like a dozen or two times. But now that Horizons is being worked on, I fell in love with the game since the game got released. So by the time we started working on Horizons, I was a fan of the game finally. So so now on Horizons, I have done and like we have a helper for the bot to make it easier to run, and this way even I can play it solo. So I must have played Horizons about 40 times solo over the last 2 months, which is like unheard of for me. So I'm completely obsessed with playing Imperium these days. It's like I'm done with work, I'm not completely sleepy, I go downstairs and I play a game of Imperium, and that's like every evening. So
I see.
yeah, I can't wait for Voidfall to be here because it's gonna be amazing. It's everything I want it to be, but Imperium is just so damn addictive. It's the sort of game that you play it once and you think it might be good. Play it 5 times and you think, yeah, there is something here. And then once you played it 20 times, you realize it's great. And then once you played it 100 times, you realize you don't really need other games. And then we have a bunch of people in our Discord who are now on their 300th plays, and they're like, yeah, I haven't opened any of the other games on my shelf for months now. So it's like,
Well, it can
it,
happen. Yeah.
it's and as I said, Nigel came up with the idea years and years ago, and I was just like at the beginning slowly improving things on it, and now it's my obsession. Now it's like if I'm not in the mood to work, then I sit down and work on Imperium instead.
I see.
So it's my happy place.
I see.
So
Now, in broad, this was the interview about your upbringing into the board game industry. Do you see doing yourself this a long, long time?
well, I hope people will keep throwing more and more money at my stuff, and then I can do this because I enjoy the freedom of doing essentially what I feel like, and getting excited about the things that I'm already excited about. So I would like to.
I see.
I definitely can't imagine going back to an office of software engineering. I could try and get a job at a board game publisher and do something a little bit more calm, but I am best where I am at now. So ideally, I would like to do this for at least until a decade more or so. So
I see. Now I go to my to a questionnaire, which was first. It is derived from I don't know if you have heard of the Proust questionnaire. It is derived from that. It was taken by Bernard Pivot, a French TV host, and then by James Lipton, who did I don't know if you ever seen Inside the Actor Studio, and this is where I got it from. And the questionnaire starts like this: What is your favorite word? Favorite word?
Yeah, questions like this will slow the thing down really because I can immediately talk about board games, but anything else I need to think really long and hard about because they're not in my head. I don't know. Like, I'm thinking about there's that word that I always say, but I don't remember what that word is now, so I don't remember. I don't know. I suspect I might be a very bad subject for this question.
Yeah,
Do you want to
you
try?
must have a word which you like.
I do, but I've completely forgotten what it is. My brain really doesn't focus on things that it doesn't focus on.
Could you adjust a bit the headphones because they I don't know what happened. Yeah.
So my brain really struggles on focusing things that aren't
Yeah,
at the forefront.
you must have. Yeah, board game is a word.
Sure, let's go with board game.
Well, what is your least favorite word?
Chores.
Chores. Yeah, you see that one you found fast.
That one's easy.
What turns you on creatively, emotionally, spiritually?
Success.
Success. Yeah. What turns you off?
Busy work. Not true, because sometimes busy work keeps me occupied the right way. It's a hyper focus kind of thing. If I'm not focused, then busy work is the absolute death. If I'm super focused, then I can't stop with the busy work. So what turns me off? I guess not caring. I don't know. It's a vicious circle.
I see.
I'm at the mercy of my brain. I am not in control. It's a very special place up here.
What is your favorite curse word?
I mean, I'm a big Battlestar Galactica fan enough to say frack, and I do use that a lot in real life.
What sound or noise do you love?
What sound
Or noise,
do
yeah.
I?
Sound or noise.
Any annoying little noise that I make? And what do I dislike? Any annoying little noise that anybody else makes?
So that's the sound of noise do you hate? Which profession outside the one you already do you would not want to attempt?
What would I not want to attempt?
Yeah. No, what you would like to attempt. No,
Or
not
what would I like to attempt?
outside the thing you do now.
Obviously, astronaut.
Astronaut.
That's very easy.
And what would you not like to attempt?
Um, Anything involving staying outside in the sun for long.
Such a software engineer answer.
I'm a day walker and proud of it.
If, and now my last question, if heaven exists, what would you expect God to say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Uh, I want to say something witty, but again, I need like a 15 minutes and a piece of paper to come up with something witty. So
No, it doesn't need to be witty. What would you expect him to say?
I would expect him to say something very witty.
I see.
Something specifically like a reference that I would immediately understand and would have a great laugh about. And I would be like, oh my God, that is so witty. You know, that kind of thing.
David, this was our interview, and I want to thank you for coming on. I hope you had a good time. I hope that I managed to dodge your expectations.
You definitely had a few new questions in there that I haven't had before. So thumbs up.
and I hope we can meet each other in person, maybe in Essen.
Yep,
I had
I'll be there.
a good time, and thank you for your for a willingness to talk and share with us a bit of your
I,
life.
no, nobody ever accused me of not talking.
Well, thank you again. I kindly ask you to wait a bit after I do the closing, the outros, and speak a bit afterwards.
All right.
Thank you again for this hour. I wish you to and wait for your new games, and hope you have some new ones on pipeline, even if it's not
Hopefully.
brass duel. I love white. I say goodbye to you here. I'll go, and I want to thank everyone who came and watched live, um, who said something there out there in the chat. Thank you. Um, I want to thank David for coming with us today again. And if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe, because keeps the internet alive, and it helps the channel. Also, you can support the channel on Patreon if you like that. And we'll see you hopefully on next playthroughs and on new interviews which are coming, are on the pipeline. Until then, all I have to say to you is thank you again, and play a lot, play loads, as it says in here. Have fun, and bye bye, fine folks, wherever in the world you are.